I'm Sharon Styles, and I live in Sacramento, California. What started off as a journey to find my family history led to my ancestral home in a small Texas town, a forgotten cemetery, and a rich history of African Americans in Central Texas. The people and history of Bull Hill Cemetery was nearly forgotten. Thankfully, a small group of dedicated people and the citizens of Marlin, Texas, would not allow their stories to remain untold. In order to understand the people who died here, you must first understand the people who lived here.
If you look at the history of Marlin back on the very early beginnings, it was a very flourishing community.
Marlin's history links to Fort Milam, which was established in 1834. The fort was eventually abandoned. In the 1850s, slave owner Churchill Jones purchased a large area of land and moved his entire family and slaves to the area. Emancipation changed the economy. African American farmers would be the backbone of Marlin's community. Slave owner Churchill Jones had been ordered to give land to his formerly enslaved workers as a condition of his return to citizenship in the United States after the Civil War. That land remained in the families for generations. For most families of Marlin, their roots can be traced back to when the city was established. Milton Scruggs left Marlin more than 60 years ago. Now living in Sacramento, he remembers what life was like in those days that used to be.
We were mainly all what you might call family-oriented, because most of the people in the area was, to some degree, associated with each other. And I could leave from one person's house, and if it was too late for me to go back home, I could spend the night, no problem.
The union between the churches, the school, and the community was quite different from what it is today. So everybody virtually knew everyone else. Everybody just played the role that they were called upon to play.
My parents were high school sweethearts. Both of them were the children of farm families who lived in different communities outside the city limits of Marlin. Eventually, both their families moved into the city and they lived in the same neighborhood. My dad was the oldest of 6 children. He was drafted into the Korean War. Before leaving, he asked my mother to wait for him. After being honorably discharged in 1952, he came back to Marlin, they got married, and 2 days later caught a train to California. My parents would become part of the largest migration within the borders of America. It was between 1915 and 1970, nearly 6 million African Americans left the South, headed north or west in search of true freedom. With all that was happening in Marlin, Texas for African Americans, there was a burden of the South they could not escape. For my parents, that would lead them to California. Over the years, I had questions, and they would answer them up to a point. When they reached that point, I knew not to ask any more questions. Our parents, like many, wanted to shield and protect us from the negative aspects of the childhoods they left behind. They wanted us to be free of that burden for a while longer. In 1980, I moved to Fort Worth, Texas, and slowly learned the answers to those childhood questions, which led to even more questions.
What do you guys want to do?
During that period, my niece called from California and asked for help with a school project.
The first time I asked my aunt to gather information for the family, I remember I was in the 7th or 8th grade, and it was for a school project. We had to do a family tree and things like that. And I remember the teacher saying, "You'll need this later. This will be some important information that you'll be glad that you gathered."
I collected all of my father's information and all of my mother's information, and then I sent it back to California for her school project, and I sort of put it away and forgot about it.
The second time I contacted my aunt for information about the family, it was my first year in college, and the project was to get a family tree, so the family information along with the medical history, as much as we could find out about our families.
So I pulled out that same information and sent it back to her for her project, but I had a thought that I would go ahead and videotape my grandmother.
name is Mary Lillian Paul Johnson. I growed up on the farm, and I was the oldest child of 8.
The moment that interview began, unbeknownst to me, my grandmother's words would answer questions I never knew to ask. Many years would pass, and I would find myself back in California with a stronger, more focused desire to find my roots.
Then one day a cousin in California said, "Where are they buried?" It stopped me for a moment because I had no idea where they were buried. So I emailed a cousin in Dallas, Kenya Paul, and she said, "I think it's a place called Bull Hill or Bull Run." And I went online, found some information on the Falls County website that Jim Bruseth from the Texas Historical Commission and Nidra Lee were working on this cemetery, and if anyone had information to contact them. So I called Jim, left a message, and he called me back.
That phone call would lead to several years, many miles, and countless hours of research and hard work. Bull Hill Cemetery was part of a large parcel of land which belonged to the Churchill-Jones family. But the present-day Churchill-Jones family no longer lived in the area and knew they would never return to the land. So in 2006, they decided to sell it.
Only going to sell to someone with a historic focus, regardless of price.
Jones sold the property to the Summerlee Foundation. The Summerlee Foundation is dedicated to animal protection and preserving Texas history. John Crane, president of the foundation, was told about the cemetery while touring the property.
I first learned about it from Churchill-Jones when he said there's an old cemetery somewhere on the property. He said, I'm not quite sure where, but I think it's back over there.
It was John Crane who immediately recognized the need to uncover and preserve the history of the cemetery.
One of our program areas is Texas history, so it was natural for us to want to be involved as a partner with the descendants from Bull Hill Cemetery and to work together to celebrate, number one, the discovery or rediscovery of the cemetery, and also to do as much research as possible on who is here.
When we started working at Bull Hill, one of the first things we did was to conduct some archaeological investigations out there. We brought in some remote sensing technology and a ground-penetrating radar instrument which sends a radar beam down, and when it hits something, it bounces back up and gives us an image of what's below the ground. And so we started doing that, and the reason for that is that while there was a fence that had largely fallen down around the cemetery, we didn't know exactly how large the cemetery might be and where graves might be located. And through remote sensing, we were able to get a pretty good idea about the layout of some of the graves, or many of the graves, and find places where that was fenced today, or more or less fenced today, where there were graves indicating that people had been buried there, and other areas of the cemetery where we found very little evidence.
In April 2008, after the brush and weeds were cleared, Jim Bruseth invited me to visit Bull Hill Cemetery, meet the team, and meet Churchill-Jones, the great-great-grandson of the man who brought my enslaved ancestors from Alabama to Texas in the 1850s.
I was absolutely thrilled when Churchill-Jones was able to come out to the site, and he really added much to our research project, not in the sense of what he told us about his ancestor, but really in terms of really offering a counter perspective to what was being told by many of the Black descendant community members in Marlin about the history of Marlin.
Researching enslaved ancestors can be difficult and often involves attempting to contact the descendants of the slave owner for records or information. In many cases, those slave-owning descendants never reply to those inquiries.
It's a hard chapter. The ownership of one human being by another that is being enforced by a fairly brutal system of control is, when we look back at it now, we shrink in horror from it. And so they're wrestling with that. They would prefer not to be reminded that their forebears were engaged in this. And they are connected through their families to those people. And so that is a hard thing to acknowledge. And so again, I give Mr. Jones great credit for being there that day.
All of these emotions just started rolling through me. I began to wonder what was happening in the lives of those individuals as they worked here and toiled here and lived and died here, and I was just overwhelmed. And even when I describe it, I cannot give it justice. I cannot tell you just the deep and raw emotion that came over me. I thought about how difficult their life must have been, what it must have been like for them, and how many dreams and wishes and hopes that they could never realize. How suffocating that must have been for them. And just like now, every time I think about that moment, it moves me, it touches me. And it reminds me of how blessed all of us are to live in this land today. I knew that God had given me this mission, this goal, that I had to research the cemetery, find out as much as I could about the people, and do something to recognize them, to have them be remembered, to have their names spoken in the earth at least another time.
I would put all of my energies into looking for the names of anyone who might be buried in Bull Hill Cemetery. For one of those enslaved, Ned Broaddus, his words can be heard through the WPA Slave Narrative Project, giving us a glimpse of what he endured.
Marsh thought there would never be no free Negroes in Texas. Marsh Churchill sent his Negroes to Texas under an overseer. Marsh sent about 200 of us in a train or wagons on the Texas road. We worked on the way on plantations where the hands had gone and they needed help. They wanted to be mean and bossy to us, but Marsh Williamson told them no. We came to Texas by the way of Mobile and New Orleans, crossed the Mississippi on a flat boat above where the steamboats loaded.
But even the plantations on the Texas frontier back in the 1850s were relatively rough.
Didn't have many fences, nor much law in those days.
It was frontier slavery. It was new slavery. It had only been going for 30 years, really, since statehood and the Republic before.
This frontier slavery still needed a burial place for owners and enslaved. The workers built a wall of handmade red brick around the Jones family cemetery. Bull Hill was designated the burial grounds for the enslaved. It remained hallowed ground after emancipation. Freedom came as a shock to those enslaved on the Jones plantation.
Mattie Paul Travis was my great-great-grandmother. I remember her story that they were just working in the field. She was being trained, she said, to be a house servant, and that the bell rang and there was some type of pavilion that they would come to and eat. And she knew that it was too early for that, but they all went up there, and that there were some white men on horses, and one of them read for a long time from some papers, and afterwards pronounced that you all are free. And so she said, they asked the question, well, do we go back into the field and work, or are we going to stay here for lunch? And they had no idea what that meant. You own what you've got on your back, and that's it, and you can go now.
In the years following emancipation, the freedmen built churches, schools, and some started businesses. They looked out for one another. They married, maintained families, sent sons and husbands off to war, and they weathered the storms of life together. Despite the hard times, the closeness of the families and community left fond memories. Memories that Milton Scruggs still holds dear.
Well, the most thing I miss about the area is the feeling of going home. Now, I've traveled just about all over the world. And the thing that makes me feel good most is when I can go back home. Now, home is here. People say home is where where you plant your feet or where you find yourself, that's great. As far as living concerned, but as far as the feeling inside, home is where you were born and raised. The feeling of being at home. Even though I don't have anybody at home now that I can go see, I still have the feeling, you know. I still like to go back and look at the land, the roads, the roads, you know, that type of thing. That's home to me.
Like Mr. Scruggs, those that left still yearn for home. For those that remained, on December 10th, 1961, the community turned out in great numbers to bury Mrs. Pearl Sneed Paul. Pearl Paul was my great-grandmother.
That was the last time we went to Bull Hill. After the funeral, they locked the gates and we never went back in.
The reason for the closure is unclear. Today, only 7 intact headstones remain in Bull Hill Cemetery. Many families believe the headstones were demolished.
Someone come in here with a bulldozer and move all of the tombstones to the corner of the property line.
We always, respected his hallowed ground, and as I say, Mother and Dad were, very aware of active burials going on in there, during my childhood. Those stopped at about the time I went off to college in 1961, and really I don't have any recollections of anything occurring after that.
It is difficult to know exactly what happened more than 50 years ago. No photos have been found to verify the number of headstones that may have been in the cemetery. Nidra and I located more than 100 death certificates for people buried in Bull Hill. John Crane, Nidra Lee, and Jim Bruseth uncovered documents and contracts relating to the elder slave-owning Churchill Jones. One in particular had special importance to me. I traced my paternal line back to my great-great-grandmother, Eliza Sneed. The 1994 recording of my grandmother provided additional information of the lives of my enslaved ancestors.
My grandmother told me just about everything that I learned about the slavery.
The death certificate for Grandma Eliza Sneed, stated she was born in 1846 in Alabama. It also revealed the names of her parents. Among the documents belonging to slave owner Churchill Jones was an 1852 contract to transport enslaved people from Alabama to Texas. It listed most of the 50 to 60 workers by name. Among the names were George, Negro woman Harriet, and her 6 children. Grandma Liza would have been one of those 6 children, and her age would have been about 6 or 7. My grandmother's words were concrete proof that I could trace my ancestry from those enslaved people brought from Alabama to Texas to work the Churchill Jones plantation.
She was 7 years old when the group that she was in that was sold from the slavery and sold them to the people of Falls County, and they brought them to Marlin, which she was in that bunch. But she said at the time of slavery, she was so small, she didn't have to go to the field to work, but the rest of the women had to go to the field and work.
I do have to say that even though we are aware of the history in America when it comes to slavery, there is something about seeing your ancestor's name on a document that stops you cold in your tracks. I just have to say that. I can recall sitting at my computer, and when I opened up the screen and I saw that contract, my hands started shaking. I remember thinking, my God, this is actually this is my family. And this, even though you know that slavery is real in America and that it happened, there's something that happens within you when you see their name on a piece of paper. It made me, even as I think about it now, so many years later, I started shaking and I started crying and then I started laughing, and it was all of these emotions they just started rolling through me.
For me, having the words of my grandmother sharing my family history along with the documentation is a blessing. I've realized so many others do not have the benefit of an elder to pass on the oral history of their families. For most African Americans, the stories of the past have been lost.
It is absolutely correct when people say that African American history is largely oral. And right now we're at a really important moment when most of that history is actually dying because most of the older generation is passing away. I would stress that most projects are unable to move forward unless there is an oral history component to it.
It was the community who had to decide what they wanted to see happen at Bull Hill. Everyone wanted the same thing, a rededication ceremony to honor their ancestors.
And Lord, we invite your presence to be with us in this ceremony. In Jesus' name, amen and amen.
On a hot Saturday morning in July of 2010, more than 200 people came to Marlin to be part of the rededication of Bull Hill Cemetery and the unveiling of its historical marker.
People from Austin came, people from Dallas came, people from Houston came, and there was so much love, but so much respect and so much excitement in the air about the cemetery and about its rededication.
When I see family members from the family that owned my family, that's a strange thing. You know, that I gotta admit, that is one of the most, it's hard to just sit here and describe that. I was glad that they had the courage to come and to speak. I appreciated their words.
There are veterans buried in Bull Hill Cemetery, men who served a country that often did not value their service. In honor of these men, Fort Hood Military Base dispatched a color guard to salute their fallen brothers. Bull Hill Cemetery would be designated a historic Texas cemetery, which acknowledges the cemetery as a historically significant site. It would also be designated a state archaeological landmark, which provides legal protection under the Antiquities Code of Texas.
Sharon Styles and William Broadus Jr., will you please come forward for the reading of the names?
What started off as an elementary school project for my niece Deidre led to amazing historical discoveries.
Mrs. Callie Brown Broadus.
Mr. E.C. Broadus.
Who knew it was going to turn into something like this? It's touched so many lives, not just our family personally, but so many other lives, and encourage other people to find out more about their own family history.
Mr. Tom Broadus. Mr. Wyman Broadus.
I think that one of the small things that we can do is try to bring honor and respect to them. You know, in all civilized societies, they respect their dead. And I think that people who were slaves have not been respected in this nation. And have just been thrown away and buried wherever you might want to put them.
Sarah Dials.
Mr. Peter Downs.
I found that over the course of doing close to 2 years worth of research in Marlin, that I became not just a Marlinite, but a member of the family.
Mrs. Frances Guy.
M.L. Guy, male baby.
What we have found has been greater than anything I ever anticipated.
It was an honor to be here and be part of it.
Mrs. Betsy McDaniel James.
Mr. Martin James. Mr.
Everyone in the cemetery is my family. This journey was just as amazing as the destination. And just like all journeys, there were moments of great joy and moments of deep sadness. Some of the people who started on this journey with me have now passed away, including my own dad. When everything else passes away, the memories and the love still remain. I keep the love in my heart. What I know for sure is that everyone deserves to be remembered and to have someone speak their name.
Mrs. Sylvia Johnson Washington, Ethel Virginia Webb,
Jerry Kenneth Webb,
Mrs. Rebecca Paul Webb,
Rufus Ellis Webb,
Mrs. Pearlie Young Wright, Mrs. Annie Young, Mrs. Ella Broadus Young,
Mr. Will Young,